What's up everyone, June with the Sushi Man, and in this video, I'm going to break down the top 5 beginner mistakes that almost everyone makes when making sushi, and more importantly, how you can avoid them. So if you're just starting to learn how to make sushi, or you've been at it for a while but can't figure out why your sushi isn't turning out right, then stick around, because chances are you're making at least one of these mistakes. Alright, now let's get right into it. But first, I just want to give a quick thanks to you. Whether you're new or returning to my channel, thank you for being here. Now, I want to ask you for a simple favor. If you're enjoying my content and you're finding it helpful, then please consider hitting that subscribe button. It really does make a difference and it allows me to continue making more creative and better content. So again, I really appreciate you all for being here. Now back to our video. So starting off our list with mistake number 1, which is improper rice. I've said this many times on my channel, but the most important part of sushi is the sushi rice. That's because sushi actually refers to the vinegared rice rather than raw fish, which many people get confused. So that said, sushi simply isn't sushi without the rice, and the quality of your sushi ultimately depends on how well the rice is made. And I want to tackle this in 2 parts, so 1A and 1B. Starting with 1A, which is the type of rice. Sushi is made using Japanese short grain rice, which has a higher starch content, making it stickier than long grain rice. However, it's not as sticky as, let's say, glutinous rice, which is the kind of rice used to make mochi. And if you've ever had mochi before, well, you know how sticky it is. Anyways, Japanese short grain rice strikes the perfect balance and has the ideal texture and consistency for making sushi. Now, there are a bunch of different varieties of Japanese short grain rice, and for the most part, they're all going to work well. A couple of my favorites are koshikari and tamanishiki. The texture and flavor balances are perfect, and it's also pretty easy to find at most Asian markets. I'll also have links in the description below. Okay, now let's move on to 1B, which is another very common mistake that is detrimental to making good sushi, and that is the sushi rice making process. And they go hand in hand. Even if you have the right type of rice, if you don't know how to cook it and season it properly, then it's not gonna work. But luckily for you, I have a detailed video that takes you step by step on how to properly cook and season sushi rice, which is probably the first video you're gonna wanna watch if you're learning how to make sushi. So be sure to check that out right after this one. Alright, now let's move on to mistake number 2, which is wetting your hands too much. So I'm kind of going through this in chronological order, taking you through the steps of actually making the sushi. But one of the most common mistakes I see people make is that they drench their hands in water before they grab the sushi rice. Now, for those that have never tried making sushi or haven't really watched a sushi chef make sushi, we typically have a bowl of water or tezu next to our sushi rice, so that we can dip our hands in to prevent the rice from sticking, and we use it constantly. However, you don't want your hands to be soaking wet. Too much water will make the rice soggy and cause it to fall apart by washing away the stickiness that helps sushi hold its shape. On top of that, overly wet rice will make the nori soggy and difficult to roll, so if your sushi keeps falling apart too easily, or you notice the rice is more soggy and sticky, then pay attention to how wet your hands are. The proper way to do this is to dip a few fingers from one hand and use that to wet the other, and then quickly spread it around, and that's it. You want your hands to be shiny wet, not drenching, and that should be enough water so that the rice doesn't stick. But you do have to move fast because it quickly dries out, which is why we constantly use it. But just remember, a little bit at a time. Alright, on to our next mistake, which is overstuffing the rolls. So we know how to make quality sushi rice and properly wet our hands to handle it. Now we're on to making our rolls, and the number 1 mistake I see people make here is overstuffing it. Not necessarily with rice, but with the filling ingredients. I mean, I get it. You're making sushi at home and you have all these different ingredients that you want to put inside your cool custom roll, but the key here is to not get greedy. What's more important is the overall balance, and putting too many ingredients inside makes it nearly impossible to roll, because there's not enough space for the seaweed to overlap onto itself, which is what seals the roll. Now, it does depend on the type of roll you're making. For example, futomaki style rolls use a full sheet of nori, so you can fit much more inside. But standard uramaki or inside out rolls are pretty limited in space, and hosomaki or thin rolls are even more limited and can only hold 1 or 2 ingredients at the most. So depending on how many things you want to put inside your roll, you can change the style of roll to fit your needs. Ha, no pun intended. But for standard uramaki rolls, stick to 2 to 3 ingredients, and 1 or possibly 2 for hosomaki rolls. Alright, on to the 4th mistake, which is rolling sushi too tight and also too loose. Have you ever made a sushi roll and everything looks good until you cut it and then all the fillings fall out? Well, that's because the roll isn't tight enough. Now, the opposite is also very common, where the rice is squeezed so tight that it becomes mushed together, like mochi. And this applies to nigiri sushi as well, where the rice is squeezed too tight into a hard, chewy ball, or too loose and it falls apart. Now, I wish I could tell you there's a magical way to know exactly how much pressure you need to apply, but honestly, that just comes with experience. There are some little tricks that I can share with you though. First, when you're rolling any makizushi and you get to the point where the nori is initially wrapped around the fillings, you want to pull the top, far end of the makisu away from you, while holding and applying gentle pressure to the roll itself with your other hand. I show you this in pretty much all my sushi tutorial videos, and it helps a lot when it comes to properly tightening the rolls. For nigiri sushi, it's a lot trickier, and really it just requires repetition to get the right feel. But a couple pointers. One is to not make the initial rice ball too tight. So when you grab a ball of rice, a lot of times beginner chefs will clump it up into a tight ball, and then end up compacting it even more as they make the nigiri. This makes the rice hard and too dense. Rather than that, start with the looser ball and then shape it as you go along the steps of making nigiri sushi. Also, the first step after you form the loose ball is to make a small air pocket by poking a hole into the rice. This little pocket will help keep the rice more airy and give the nigiri better texture and mouthfeel. I know it sounds like a lot, but just focus on finding the right balance. Don't squeeze too tight, but don't leave the rice too loose either. You want it just right, the Goldilocks of sushi, so to speak. Alright, on to our last mistake. Well, sort of. I have a bonus one for you at the very end. The fifth mistake is not using a sharp knife when cutting. Alright, so you're finally at the point where you got the rice down, it's not sticking all over your hands, and the sushi is coming out nice and clean. Good job. Now you go to cut the rolls and everything gets destroyed. Sounds familiar? But don't worry, you're not the only one. I've seen this happen countless times, even with trained chefs. Cutting sushi is much trickier than it looks, but it's a crucial part of sushi making because, well, let's be real, no matter how perfectly you roll it, if the cuts are sloppy, it's still going to look like a mess. The most obvious and important solution here is to use a sharp knife. A sharp blade will slice through the roll cleanly, while a dull one tends to squish everything, or worse, snag and tear the nori, causing all the fillings to spill out. Basically a big hot mess. Now, if you don't have a sharp knife but enjoy making sushi or cooking in general, then I highly recommend getting a quality knife. At least one. And it doesn't have to be anything crazy expensive either. There are plenty of high quality knives that are affordable and will last you a lifetime, as long as you take good care of it. And if you are looking for a knife, then you're going to want to check out this video right over here, where I break down the different types of knives for sushi and help you decide which one suits your needs best. Now, besides having a sharp knife, I have a few more pro tips that I'll share with you on how to make your cuts cleaner. The first one is to wet the blade right before you cut. You'll see me explain this in a lot of my videos, but basically we're lubricating the knife so that it can glide through the cut smoother. I usually dip the tip of the knife into the water and let it trickle down the blade. You can also use a damp towel and wipe the blade if that's easier. Next tip is to use some plastic wrap. Now, you can easily cut it without using any plastic, but if you find yourself having a ton of trouble, then you might want to give it a shot. And all we do is just take a sheet of plastic and wrap the roll. Now, the important thing here is to have some extra plastic on this top end and do not cut all the way through it. You want to keep that part intact so that you could take off the plastic afterwards in one clean sheet. By wrapping the roll in plastic, it keeps the rice in place, which helps give you cleaner cuts. But again, totally optional. The last little tip I want to share with you is how to cut the roll into even pieces, because it's not just about the clean cuts. The size, or more so how uniform the pieces are, is an important factor in making good sushi. So most standard rolls are cut into 8 pieces, and the way I like to cut it is to cut it right in half first, and then take each side and cut it in half again, and then cut each quarter into halves again. I find this method to be the most foolproof way to get even-sized pieces. And I think it's because people find it easier to find a midpoint of the roll rather than making 7 cuts from one end all the way to the other. You can also cut the roll in half first, and then bring the halves together so that it aligns with each other, and then cut both halves at the same time. But this is a bit more advanced, so I recommend getting the first way down, and then once you're comfortable with it, then try this method. Alright, those are the top 5 beginner mistakes that I've seen people make all the time. Now, there is one more I want to share with you. Let's just call it a bonus mistake, which sounds kind of weird, but anyways. Another mistake that many people make is not using quality fish, or quote-unquote sushi grade fish. And this is a topic that's meant for an entirely separate video on its own. But obviously, the quality of the fish is extremely important, and you want to make sure that you're buying from trusted sources. I have a few videos about this on my channel, so be sure to check that out if that's something you're interested in. And I plan to make more videos around this topic in the near future, so stay tuned. Alright, so a quick recap of the top 5 mistakes. 1. Improper rice. 2. Wetting hands too much. 3. Overstuffing the rolls. 4. Rolling too tight or too loose. And 5. Not using a sharp knife. Now, of course, there are plenty of other challenges you might face when learning to make sushi, but these 5 are the most common mistakes I've seen beginners make. But they're all very easy fixes, and I hope that this video helps you do so, because once you know how to avoid these mistakes, making sushi is going to be a lot more fun and enjoyable. Not to mention, your sushi skills are going to level up big time. Alright, that's about it for me. I hope you enjoyed the video and found it helpful. I know it's a bit different than the usual type of content I make, but let me know in the comments if you want me to make more videos like this. I always appreciate your feedback. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. ありがとうございます。